Welcome back. Solar firm UGE International has a backlog of projects and recently won its largest project ever in Peterborough, Ontario. A recent investor presentation touts 261% profit growth year over year, but the stock price has plummeted, as you can see. Joining us now is Nick Blitterswyk. He's CEO of UGE International. We've got to start with that share price. What is going on with the share price? A steady march downward over the past year.
Yeah, no, good morning, Paul. And we hope that we've turned the corner. I think that we have to get the story out there about all the good things that we're doing, and I think it starts with that. We are talking about 5x more growth over the next 3 years and exceeding 100 million, and also feel we've turned that corner to being sustainably profitable from here on out as well. So hopefully it's up from here. We told viewers in the intro that your investor presentation cites 261% profit growth. Let's dig a little deeper into that. Explain the profit path of the company. Yeah, so big picture, commercial solar is growing very, very quickly. And it's because the economics of solar have changed so drastically here in the last few years. So last year was a real breakout year for us. Revenue went from about $6 million US to $21 million US, and looking for high growth to continue here as well.
Okay, let's explain the company. We saw some solar panels there that are familiar to many of us who drive through rural Ontario these days. Is that what your company makes?
Yeah, so we're not a manufacturer, but we are an integrator and really an energy company. So we're working with various types of companies and governments and agricultural opportunities to deploy commercial solar projects in Canada, US, and a little bit internationally as well.
What are the economics from the user's point of view of solar power?
So this is, I think, a big secret, but it's an immediate economic proposition for every client we work with. So clients aren't putting money down, and we're just immediately giving them typically cheaper energy than they can get from the grid.
And those clients are who?
Well, so it's a pretty big mix. We just finished 17 schools here in Toronto. We're doing a lot of warehouses and so on. Like a lot of our clients are REITs, other types of real estate ownership groups. But those types of buildings that are wide and not too tall. So grocery stores and so on. And
are those clients able to sell power back to the grid? We often hear about that.
Yeah. So in Ontario, that was a very common model. Around the world, it's not so much. So sometimes, but what's actually often happening is, so we're an end-to-end energy company, right? So in these cases, what we're doing is packaging together the whole project and selling energy from that project to the client cheaper than they get from the grid. So they save 20 to 40% off the grid right away.
How big is your potential market out there?
Well, it's less than 1% market penetration right now, so it's virtually limitless in terms of our size and where we're going. Like if I just look at the New York market, which is one of our top markets, it's about 1.2 billion that we've identified just around New York City. So far, the total market's about 10 million in that market.
How competitive is the space right now?
Very young, very fragmented. It's really just getting started. We're one of the top players in both Canada and the US, and so it's just a market that we think is ripe for expansion from here.
What is your backlog like?
So our backlog, so revenue last year, 21 US, backlog at the end of the year, 36. We look forward to showing growth in that this year as well.
So again, what do you think the market is not getting about this story?
Well, I think it's a bit of a tough question. I think we just need to get the story out, I think, a little bit. I think the economics of solar is still a secret. I think we need to get that word out. And then the ability for us to maintain high growth and profitability going forward is something that we feel very confident in, and hopefully investors will pick up on as well.
Electricity prices have increased in Ontario. It's a hot political subject. Does that play into your favor when traditional electricity prices rise?
Yeah, if you go back to 2009 when the feed-in tariff came out in Ontario, at that point in time, the cost of solar was something like 80 cents per kilowatt hour, and the grid was a little over 10 cents. What's happened now is the cost of solar is in the teens, and the grid rate is in the teens. So we're having this crossover, what we call grid parity, happening in Ontario and elsewhere around the world that really makes solar competitive.
What about government subsidies in one way or another? That's been part of the picture here in Ontario. It's controversial, the government buying solar power, green power at higher than market rates.
Yeah.
Is that still something that goes on in the solar sector?
Yeah, so two things. Right now, like the incentives and subsidies, much less now than ever has been. Of course, traditional fossil fuels are subsidized as well, right? But in Ontario is one of a number of jurisdictions around the world, along with, say, Germany and Spain and so on, that picked up on that and helped solar get off the ground. Solar is a totally different business now. Solar panel prices since that time dropped about 90%.
What about U.S. tariffs? I believe those are tariffs on Chinese products, I believe. Is that correct? And how much a factor are they in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, it's noise in our day-to-day life. It's tariffs on some of the components that we buy, but big picture, we're solar costs have come down so much. Again, 90% in the last 10 years. So a little 30% tariff here and there, although it's unwelcomed, it's something we just work around.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
That's Nick Blitterswyk. He's the CEO of UGE International.